One. Crap, I forgot the bit. I didn't come up with a bit for this one.
You didn't
tell Cloud, this is the generation with your favorite theme song.
Well, you do that for the check out the Patreon video that no one put up.
It will be up by the time this goes out to you. That was my plan. Not the
okay. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, not this live one. We're gonna have a Patreon accompanying our discussion of Generation 3 of Pokemon. We have a tier list that's going to be up on the Patreon, so I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we are going to talk about Generation 3 of Pokemon. That was the one that was primarily on Game Boy Advance, which started over here in North America on March 19th, 2003, with the release of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. I will say this now, there are a lot of games in this generation. Primary ones are Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and I like to lump Coliseum and XD in here because, I mean, they're kind of like main series adjacent at this point. So you got those major games in the series as well as a ton of spin-offs. Now, just as kind of like a refresher, Generation 3, pretty big generation for the Pokemon series. A lot of big shakeups mechanically that are still something that the series abides to this day. Got the introduction of stuff like natures and abilities. They redid the whole stats system, so now the way that Pokemon stats work, it's been like that since Ruby and Sapphire all the way to today. It was a little different in the first couple generations. You had the introduction of the Hoenn region, 135 new Pokemon, so we had 386. This is a generation that was really well known for a lot of the spin-offs later on in the generation, teasing the next generation, because this generation went on for a really long time. Like, this was the longest generation in North America at about 4 years and 1 month.
Yep.
So it's pretty well known for being a pretty big generation. You had a lot of spin-offs on the Game Boy Advance, some on DS, on other systems. So, like, there's going to be a lot to talk about. But, of course, got to ask the question real quick, what your first exposure to Generation 3 Pokemon was.
All right, here we go. Because this is the first Pokemon generation I ever personally owned. I got a copy of Ruby in the summer of 2003. And it was my entire life for that summer. Because I was fucking addicted to Pokemon Ruby. My God. Yeah, I mean, I would later also buy a copy of Sapphire in addition, because I was just obsessed with Pokemon Ruby. I'm like, I already have a completed save file with a lot of Pokemon I like on it. I'm just gonna buy another copy of the game so I can play it again. Yeah, this was a pretty formative generation for me. For those who don't know, for the two people that don't know me,
Owl and me.
I will say that the third generation, obviously not my first. I've been on this boat since it was at the port and they were still building the damn ship, basically. But Generation 3 is definitely like the first big generation for me. So first of all, Ruby version, first game in the entire franchise I got on launch day. So like I had Pokemon Red and Pokemon Gold. Those were like my two primary games, like the birthday after they had come out. But this was the first time I actually like got them like right the day that they came out. Like I had saved up allowance money and like my mom pitched in a little bit extra. I got a strategy guide with it and like I went all out for this game. I remember I went to Toys R Us in order to get my game. Like Toys R Us isn't even a thing anymore over here. Like Toys R Us is gone.
Rest in peace.
And
I bought my copy of Sapphire at Toys R Us.
Dude, you know what sucks is that that Toys R Us that I got Pokemon Ruby at was the same location that I got my Nintendo Switch at, both on launch day. So it was around for a long time. Like, and
I missed Never mind.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I miss Toys R Us.
Yeah, so like it's crazy too. So like, it was my first exposure to Generation 3. I will say that Toys R Us definitely responsible for a lot of childhood Pokemon memories. They were. We'll get more into it though when we like talk more about it. But I want to hear from Landon what his first exposure was, because we know his was a little different.
My first exposure was when they did the premiere for the anime of like that generation. Like they put up
Pokemon Advance.
Like they dropped a special. Yeah, they dropped the first 2 episodes as like a special.
I remember that.
Yeah, and like that was like I was like, oh, that's gross. Why would they do this? And then then there was a kid with that had a Game Boy Advance, and I think it was a copy of Sapphire. And he was like, "Look at this," and I'm like, "That's gross."
Yeah, I remember
that.
I remember. I didn't know that this was like a special thing for like but like, yeah, I remember you telling us that part. Like, that's why you were still on Pokemon Silver for a really long time.
And then, I mean, then I got a Game Boy Advance SP, and I was like, all right, what's this shit about? So, I went forward and bought, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green.
Was this, what, were you actually, like, able to get into one of the Hoenn games first that generation, or did you end up with Kanto remakes first?
I'm pretty sure I got the Hoenn games first.
Okay, so
pretty sure. I know Ruby was my main file. I might have gotten them both at the same time. I forget, but Ruby was my main of the 2 original Hoenn.
Team Ruby. Then we're all on Team Ruby.
Team Ruby.
Yep.
And that'll be the end of us liking.
Agreeing. Yeah. This is this is as far as we go with all 3 of us agreeing on something Pokemon related.
Ever.
True.
This is it.
Pokemon Ruby.
Pokemon Ruby. Thumbs up.
So, obviously, Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, we might as well just start talking about them. These are the main games of the generation. This is what the podcast is primarily geared towards for this episode, as previous episodes have been. Like I said, 135 new Pokemon. You had the introduction of the Hoenn region. The introduction of a bunch of new stuff that I mentioned earlier. You also had the introduction of Pokemon contests, not something that stuck around too long into the series, but still big side attraction. It is worth noting that unfortunately, this generation also, and primarily with like Ruby Sapphire, before everything got to like stretch out a bit more, we didn't have the ability to obtain all the Pokemon at first. It was it's kind of weird. So like, it's not like the Pokemon, like the Pokemon games on the Nintendo Switch, where like they literally will not add the Pokemon to the coding of the game, so you cannot use them. They were in the code of Ruby and Sapphire. Problem was they didn't make them obtainable in any way within Ruby and Sapphire, except for the 202 Pokemon that were in the game.
Which is still like...
Which is... For the time, that's not bad.
It's like good.
It's
like you
like,
have a good variety with just base Ruby Sapphire.
And I think one really good strength about these games is like this is when they started to realize like how to balance Pokemon encounters across a game, because they give you a lot of choices across the game, pretty balanced. Like this is like the first game I remember where you could have a bunch of cool choices to choose from as early as like the first few routes before you've even gotten to the first gym. Like, well, you got Tailo, you got Poochyena, Zigzagoon, you got Nincada. If you wanted to go past Rustboro for something, you could go get Whismur. You had Pelipper. You could get Wingull. You could get Shroomish, Wurmple and its evolutions, Slakoth.
If you're lucky, you could get a Ralts.
You get a Ralts. You could get Surskit. I mean, it's rare and it's probably not worth the hunting, but you could get it.
If you want
a Skitty.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. You could. Yeah. It's on the route north of Oldale. That's right. It's like a 1% encounter.
Yeah. It's there. Could you not also get Lotad and C-Dot?
Yep.
Yeah.
Those were
right after Petalburg.
Version exclusives.
Correct.
But yeah, you could at least, they're obtainable.
What was you guys' first starter choice for this game?
Torchic. Except I think I didn't get very far on my first playthrough, and I restarted and did it with Mudkip.
Okay.
Good choice. Good choice. That's the real starter. So Mudkip, got it. Yours was Torchic?
Yeah. Oh, you were just confirming, like you were like saying the same thing as like Jack, because
yes. No, mine. I believe mine was either Torchic or Trico.
I thought it was
I realized very quick that both of those Pokemon end up being suck. And then,
suck.
Yeah. So
I will say, when I was a kid,
file was definitely a Mudkip.
Okay. When I was a kid, Swampert was my favorite of the three.
Good. What happened?
I don't know. I got better at the game.
You got dumb?
Yeah.
Did you get hit by a brick?
It's not like I'm saying like Marshtomp is easy mode, but there are like when you're a dumb kid and you're trying to solo the entire game with your starter, like there are some boss fights that will be like roadblocks for you if you choose Trico or Torchic.
Oh,
because they both have a flying weakness.
I was gonna say,
and almost every boss character, like enemy boss, like Team Magma, Team Aqua, like boss fight has either a Golbat or a Crobat, which will know Air Cutter.
For me, it wasn't so much the evil team. So like Team Magma and Aqua, very interesting. The first instance in the series where they had, the only instance where there was like two actual rival groups. Like, I guess you could say that like you could stretch it and be like, well, Generation 7 also had two evil teams, but they weren't opposing each other. And one of them was like higher up on the hierarchy. And it wasn't so much an evil team as it was an evil organization that was posing as like a good guy team, because you had like the Aether Foundation and Team Skull. So that's like not quite the same. Team Magma and Aqua were like a unique thing where like they were butting heads with each other. I never had any problems with any of them. My issue as a Blaziken user was Winona, because she would Dragon Dance and Aerial Ace my whole team to death, and there was nothing I could do about it. Because I was not smart enough to use a Lairon at the time and Hard Wallet, and even if I did, it had Earthquake. So that was cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of which, gym leaders in this game. Pretty cool set of gym leaders, if you ask me.
There are some gym leaders in this game. Yes.
I love pretty much every gym leader in this game, except for one of them.
So what's the one?
It's
your
Norman.
least favorite? It's Norman.
Norman.
Yeah, and it's like, it's just because it happens so quickly after you beat Flannery. Like, literally after you beat Flannery, you can just go to Petalburg and fight Norman right away. Like, there's no build up to it. It's just like, yeah, it's like, you know, it was the thing at the beginning of the game when you're like, your dad's like, you're not strong enough to fight me yet, bitch. So, like, it's cool from that angle, but, like, there's no, in terms of pacing, there's, like, no lead up to it, and it makes it feel less climactic, I guess.
That's true. So the thing with that is like, and I mean, this is sort of like the same thing as like, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow had the same issue where like after Blaine, you can just go right to Giovanni. But
yeah,
I think honestly, it's not as bad in this game, because in this game, there is some stuff you can do on the side.
Yeah.
Like you can go to the desert, because you end up getting the Go Goggles, and you can explore that whole area before you even touch Norman, get yourself some levels, get a fossil, which is probably the smart thing to do because you're probably going to end up going by Rustboro anyway on your way back. So like, just do that.
And then I just think it's funny that like the gap between like gyms 4 and 5 is like, you know, extremely minimal outside of like optional stuff. But then like the whole path that you have to take to get from gyms 5 to 6 is like the longest like stretch of time in the game without a gym, because there's like 4 routes on your way.
Yeah. So the funny thing is like half of that time is spent like backtracking through areas you've already been to. But to be fair, the Hoenn region is kind of weird because you don't get the Fly HM till like super late. So like you don't get fly until right before you fight Winona, and then you can't actually use it till after you beat her, which means that you don't have access to the fly HM until you're 6 badges in. So you have to really move around the map.
I kind of love and hate that. Like, I wish that fly was available earlier so that it's easier to get from one place to another. But at the same time, I like it. And this might just be nostalgia talking, but I like it from the angle that it makes it feel like more of an adventure when you have to like go from place to place. But like in Hoenn, there's very little like gates that you have to go through to get from like one route to a town or to another route.
There's actually none.
It's a very, very seamless world.
There
like,
is...
you can, outside of like the occasional small dungeon.
So outside of like going into caves, there is one set of gates, and it's not the way that they use the gates in previous games. It is just to get the cycling road section up top on Route 110.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. Because like in the previous 2 generations, they used these like gates, as what you mentioned, Jack, to like...
They're basically like loading zones.
They're like loading zones. It's basically a way for them to load the next area without it feeling like a loading screen, like you're just traveling on the map. But in the Game Boy Advance games, specifically
the Hoenn ones,
there's none of that. It's just, except for going through the caves, like it's all, like you said, it's seamless. And I think that's just the magic of the region to me. I think it's a good, I think it's a well laid out region. I think it's fun to explore.
I love the Hoenn region so much, and like that is like a big part of why it makes it feel like one big seamless world that you can just like travel from one corner to the other, and like without any waits or like gates, or with a few exceptions like caves and shit, but like it just, I don't know. Like I love the region so much. Like every single like route and town is just super fun to explore.
Oh yeah.
We kind of got off the topic of gym leaders and started talking about the region itself, but
I like Hoenn proper as far as like the landmass goes. Like the main landmass, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And I know it gets memed on all the time, but the water, like yes, there's a lot of water routes. It's just, I feel like easy to get lost in them.
Okay. That's fair. Like I acknowledge that there is a shitload of water in the Hoenn region, but like,
so
that's
my issue with the Hoenn region and the water is not necessarily the water, because like I think it's cool that the region has a lot of water, bodies of water, locations to like surf around. It makes it fun to explore. My issue is that it's too homogenized with the encounters. Like by this point, there's plenty of water types in the game, and they just kind of restrict you to a few species while you're surfing, another couple different species while you're fishing, and then like another couple species when you're underwater. And that's really it. Like you don't have a whole lot of different options of things to run into while you're surfing. Yeah. So it's just so annoying to be like, okay, here's an encounter. It's another Whalmer. It's another Pelipper. Like it's...
And that kind of leads into what I was saying, where it's kind of easy to get lost because you're just seeing the same Pokemon all the time. It's
right.
like, all right, where am I? And am I at the top or am I at the bottom? Because I'm just seeing fucking Whalmer.
So like, and there's only like one exception, and that's like one of the routes you can start bumping into Wailord, but it's such a low encounter rate that you wouldn't even know. Like it's like a 5% encounter rate, if that, for Wailord. So like, unless you run into that Wailord, you have no idea where you are sometimes. But I mean, it's fun to explore. I like the Hoenn region just because of how much there is to do on the side. I've said this on previous podcasts, but I like the Pokemon games where there's a lot of side stuff that like you're not forced into any of it. You can just kind of discover it. And Hoenn's just like a prime example of like how you can do that in a way that's like fun.
Hoenn is like the best region. Like this, Hoenn and Sinnoh, in my opinion, are like the best regions for like just completely optional areas that are like, you have all these like dungeons and caves and, well, not literal dungeons, but like optional side paths that just lead to like trainers and items and shit. And it's like, you don't have to do it, but it's there if you want to. And it's really cool. And it like fleshes out the world you're exploring.
Yeah. And they like have a weird variety of places that you can do this with too, right? So like you have the abandoned ship, you have New Mauville, which is like an underground like power plant. You have the Trick House, not wild Pokemon, but a totally optional building where you can do puzzles that are like gym style puzzles and fight like a bunch of trainers as you go along.
There's the entire like ocean route that spreads from like Evergrande City to Slateport.
Right, yep.
Like on the south. Like most of that you never have to even look at. Like you'll have to
you'll have to do that in Emerald, but you don't have to do the whole stretch. You have to just go just before Pacific Log because that's where Sky Pillar is.
Yeah.
So,
but like there's so much there to just explore if you want to.
Right.
There's Mirage Island,
which most people will never see in their lives. I still haven't yet.
I still haven't.
I tried.
Without action replay.
Yeah.
That's how much I actually played Ruby. Was I actually tried
to get Mirage Island.
I tried to. I didn't make it.
I also love like the general like, you know, like the first two generations. There's a lot of like, you know, rumors and shit that spread around on the playground, and like Mirage Island, like, you know, real thing that can happen, but it's so fucking impossibly rare.
Speaking of rumors, and this would actually be something that they would do a nod to later on in the series, you had going into space to catch a Deoxys, because supposedly if you went to the Moss Deep Space Center and you talked to the guy when there was a certain amount of rocket launches, you'd be able to take a rocket up into space and go catch Deoxys. Or, you know, what about
speaking of Deoxys is a Pokemon. I still believe that's a rumor.
There was like there's that white rock that like people had like this rumor that like you could get Jirachi through that white rock.
It's a white, and the one that literally just says it's a white rock,
and that's it. Yep. So like there was a bunch of rumors around Moss Deep about getting these mythical Pokemon, and like you were talking about, one thing that's really awesome about Generation 3, and this is something that like I'm going to be working on a video for my solo channel for in the future, is the sheer amount of like, and this is something that we're going to get to in like the other games of this generation as well. The sheer amount of like event exclusive stuff you can do, because like there's the Eon ticket, which would allow you to get Latias or Latios, whichever one you didn't have in that game. They'd give you an Eon ticket. You could get the other one. There was like a special island you could go to. Deoxys had its own island. You couldn't get there in Ruby and Sapphire. It was just the other games, Fire, Red, Leaf, Green, Emerald. And speaking of which, there was other events for like Mew in Emerald. There was an event for Lugia and Ho-Oh in Fire, Red, Leaf, Green, and Emerald. So it's like it's a lot. It's really weird that they just did a bunch of like special event stuff that you could do. And unfortunately, I didn't get to do any of it because I was a kid and I didn't know where to go to do these events. And I didn't learn about the events until like most of them were over. So,
yeah, they were all fake actually. So don't worry about it.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So
anyway, back to gym leaders.
Yes.
Did you ever answer that, Cloud?
My favorite.
Who's your favorite and who's your least favorite? Actually, Jack, who's your favorite?
Yeah, because
he said answer that.
Yeah.
You said Norman's your least favorite.
Yeah.
Are you gonna simp right now?
Listen.
He's like, do I give the simp answer? Or...
There's a high possibility.
Well, here's the thing though. We say, are you going to give us simp? That's the question. It was like he could give us the simp answer, but that doesn't narrow it down by a lot.
I was gonna say,
it's Watson. Like, that's who he's simping for.
I would say that, like, you say take out the simp answers that like removes like 2 gym leaders. That's it. Like everybody
Tate
else.
and Liza. That's it.
Tate and Liza and Watson. Like everyone else is still fair game.
No. Have you seen Watson?
All right, sure.
God, if I were to give the simp answer, I would say Wallace. But
he's also not a.
What?
Is Wallace is also you can classify him as
a
if
champion.
we're talking Emerald as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
champion as
mean,
well.
he's a gym leader in Ruby and Sapphire.
Okay.
But probably Flannery. I like Flannery a lot.
I knew it.
Shut up.
What?
It's based. So like my least favorite gym leader is probably Tate and Liza, but not like so like.
Are we talking Ruby Sapphire, Tate and Liza? Because
that gym is
sucks.
that gym is piss baby easy.
I mean, it's not. No, here's the thing though. I actually had a hard time on it, but also I was a Blaziken user, so they just spam Psychic on my Blaziken, and he was like my only high level Pokemon, so I just lost every time that they did this. But like I just don't care for them because for a really long time I just wasn't a fan of double battles. So like that's another thing.
You used one Pokemon.
Double battles. So like
Yeah.
I used other Pokemon, but they were so under-leveled because I didn't use them enough. That's another thing. Generation 3 introduced double battles, which is literally the primary way that like competitive Pokemon on the official circuit is played. So very
Jack, this man won't even let me answer the question of gym leader.
I forgot to. This is something I should have said earlier in the podcast. I forgot it. So
all right, I'll let you talk about double battles, and then maybe we'll remember.
But no, going back to the gym leader thing, I think that's probably why I didn't care for them, and I still don't care for them all that much. Not double battles like Tate and Liza. I don't care for them that much. But favorite? That's a tough one. I kind of just want to say Winona just because I think her party, the fact that she has a bunch of weirdly weird, unique flying types is just really cool.
I was going to say Winona is also like a really good leader.
Like she has just a cool team.
I also just love her town.
Yeah, Fortree's a fun city. The gym puzzle where you like go around and like push like these like blocks that are like weirdly angled in order to like move around and get through the gym. It's pretty fun. It's nothing crazy. But, you know, it's a good gym. I like it.
I do like both Flannery and Winona. I think I actually like Watson a lot.
Watson is a fun gym leader.
He is like the first big like obstacle, I feel like, in the games. Like you can get through the first two gyms and like any of like the rival fights and whatever fucking Team Magma, Team Aqua, but I still feel like Watson, especially Emerald Watson, is like he is the wall for you're either going to do pretty well going forward for a bit or you are stuck. So I think he's pretty well designed as a boss fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the May fight right before that is also a solid roadblock.
Yeah. You have two pretty hard roadblocks.
Like right in a row.
I think that's
right in a row.
I think that's one of the reasons like people have some fond memories too of these games is that they were like legitimately, for at least like if you were just picking it up for the first time and you weren't like super experienced with Pokemon at all, like they're legitimately challenging. Yeah, they're like they're tricky fights and they're not obviously it's Pokemon, so they're not going to be like insultingly hard. They're not going to be that difficult. But like they also weren't the game's not piss baby easy for the most part unless you've got tons of experience. Like it does like keep you on your toes and make you really like cherish that variety of Pokemon choices you have, like really make use of them.
And how dare you say that May fight?
I knew you were going to say that.
How dare you? Because
that Brendan fight,
that Brendan fight, that whatever I fucking called him, because I definitely played as I probably played as Brendan the first time I played the game, but then I was just like, I'm just gonna play as the girl.
Yeah, because like
why not?
And I mean, let's be real. While Crystal was the first game to introduce like having a female protagonist choice, like most people did not play Crystal. Like it's one of the worst selling games of the franchise. So people really probably like their first exposure to playing as a girl character was in Gen 3. So like that was like a big thing. So
And the person you don't choose actually shows up.
yeah,
Like whereas like in Crystal,
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, the other character
she
just
doesn't exist.
So they
It
really
doesn't exist.
They really make it a point that like being able to pick the gender for your player character like affects the game in a tangible way, which is pretty cool. Like they still, toy with that for the most part across like just about every game in the franchise now, and that's all something that started with Ruby and Sapphire.
They're also like slightly different from each other. Like they're not carbon copies either. Like they have like unique lines of dialogue.
Yeah, May's more like energetic. Brendan's a little like more laid back, kind of snarky. Not quite snarky in the vein of like Blue or Silver, but he's still kind of sassy. So like whereas May is more friendly, playful. So like you get a different personality based on who you pick. I think that's pretty cool.
My only issue with the rivals in this game is they fall off.
Yeah.
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 They really do.
Like from a story perspective, they're just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
not mincing words, they really do.
They don't build up their quote unquote replacement at all.
Yeah.
So, that is like the story, like they put a lot of work into the story for the bad the
team Magma Aqua.
Yeah, like their story is like pretty well done in Ruby and Sapphire. Emerald, it's real solid in that. And then with the legendaries and everything, like that whole storyline is pretty well done. The storyline of your rivals and fucking Wally, is that his fucking name?
Yep.
Yeah. Like you're like, all right, rival, some pretty solid fights, and then they're just like, all right, I'm done. You can fight me outside this department store if you want.
Yeah.
And then you get
done.
like one more Wally fight.
And you only have like one thing where you actually like fight him to start
previously.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like no build up.
Like part of me kind of like it's kind of like a curveball. Like he's not a very fleshed out character at all. Like he's better in the remakes.
Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. We'll talk about that when we get to Gen 6.
But I do think it's kind of funny how he like just disappears for like 3/4 of the game after you like fight him in front of Mauville, and then he just shows up and he has like a pretty solid team put together, and he's like, all right, fight me, bitch.
They do make references, like there's some slight references to him through the game if you talk to some NPCs and stuff, but like it's like there's a cutscene where he shows up at like in between you like helping him catch his first Pokemon and then that fight, but it's like not a whole lot.
Yeah, and like the only thing you really get from that point is you get that one snippet of dialogue when you go talk to his uncle.
It's like
which town?
Petalburg, where you go get
his
surf.
dad.
Yeah, so you get surf from him after you beat Norman, and he like he tells you about how Wally's doing a bit, and like that's all you get.
Wally lives in Petalburg with his parents, but he goes on a journey when he catches his Ralts, and then he goes to Verdant Turf where his uncle lives.
That's
where he gets the better air because he's a sickly child. He's a sick boy to be beaten up.
Unfortunately, I have to go pee real quick. I'll be right back.
I was say I find out ironic that Verdant Turf has like the cleaner, more like high quality air when it's closer to Mount Chimney and the route near it that are like literally ash falling out of the sky. So like,
we don't think about that.
It's Hoenn. Don't gotta explain shit apparently.
Yeah. Do not think.
Don't think.
Do not think.
It's great. No, like so. And going back to this, and I'll ask Jack more about it because I think now is a pretty good time to kind of move into it. Emerald was the third pillar game for Ruby and Sapphire, like yellow version was for Red and Blue, like Crystal was for Gold and Silver. Although I think this is probably the time where like that third pillar game like really put in extra work to be like something substantial, as opposed to like, not saying that the other third pillar games didn't like do improvements upon the base games, because obviously they all did. But like I think Emerald really kind of added extra incentives, because you had obviously the expanded plot with Team Magma and Aqua. You don't get like you only get really one side of it in Ruby and Sapphire, which is version exclusive dependent on which one you picked. You'll have, you know, one of the ones that you have to fight. And then in Emerald, you get both of them are equal. So you get a lot more of like that story fleshed out. Because of that, there's extra location to go to for Team Magma, because they have their own base while Team Aqua has a separate one. You've got obviously the Battle Frontier is a big like addition. And they've also
talking about Emerald.
Emerald added rematches. So like Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, they had like an expansion on something that Gold and Silver did, which was like having phone calls, because you got the PokeNav, and it has like a couple different features. One of them's like contest related. One of them gives you your map, I believe. And then like another one lets you like call for rematches, like all of these viable trainers that can be rematched across the game. And in Emerald, they add the gym leaders to this. So this is like the first game where you can just rematch gym leaders with in-game teams, and they get some substantial changes too. So like Emerald does, I was telling this to Landon and the rest of the audience that were listening while you were out, Jack, but I think that Emerald's probably like the first real instance of a third pillar game having substantial additions and changes to like really set it apart and give like something
100%.
Like, not saying that Crystal and Yellow didn't have these things. It's just that Emerald really like kind of put extra stuff out there that made you want to play it over Ruby and Sapphire, whereas it wasn't really something necessary for the previous two, although it was nice. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about like, was there any other, before we talk about Emerald and its differences, was there anything just like Hoenn game in general that we wanted to like kind of put out there that we haven't really talked about already?
The music.
Yes, it is very good.
The music is fucking incredible. This is a top 5 video game soundtrack for me. I could probably like, I could look at an image of like a route or a town, and I can like hear the route music. I can hear the town theme. I can hear the underwater song.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I spent
like
600 hours on Ruby, 400 hours on Emerald. Really catchy music. It kind of gets in your head.
I love it. I love all of it.
So I want to move to talking about Emerald so we can keep everything going and talk about the rest of the Generation 3 in general. But as I had mentioned earlier, Ruby, Sapphire were far from the only games of this generation, and kind of was needed because you didn't have all the Pokemon available at once. But Emerald was the big like third pillar game. And do we like, what experience do we have with Emerald? Because I have quite a bit.
Oh my god. I remember seeing Emerald in a Nintendo Power ad back in the day. And I'm like, whoa, there's another Pokemon. Like, because I didn't get well, actually, Leaf Green was the first game in the franchise that I got on launch day, but that's besides the point. I remember seeing it in Nintendo Power and thinking and seeing the release date, and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. That's right after my birthday. I can get that with birthday money. And I did. I got it on launch day, and it was my life for the entire summer again. It was, you know, more or less the same adventure, the same experience, but with like a lot of enough bonus content and like differences from the original games that it felt fresh. Like it felt like a new adventure.
Yeah. I think one thing that was cool about Pokemon Emerald too is like it was the first game since Crystal, and the first game to like make it like just a thing in general that the Pokemon had like animations for their sprites when they came out of the Pokeball. Because like Crystal had it, but they didn't have it for Ruby, Sapphire, and they didn't have it for Fire Red, Leaf Green for in battle. If you went to the menu, like they would do like a little bounce, but that's about it. But Emerald, they brought back the whole animation thing. It's not quite as detailed for the first for a little bit, but like it was nice to have like the Pokemon have these extra frames of expression where like you could kind of just I just thought it was cool. It was just an extra little touch.
Mm-hmm.
I played a lot of Pokemon Emerald, as I mentioned. I sunk a lot of time into trying to do the Battle Frontier, which didn't go well. I got like 3 silver medals out of the 7.
Battle Frontier is hard.
I never got a single gold medal. Like, so one other thing I wanted to share. The Battle Tower in Ruby Sapphire, I got on a mean streak, and I was this close to 100 straight wins. I was on, I think it was Battle 93 or something, 94. And they just decided, and keep in mind, I'm a stupid 11 or 12-year-old kid. So like I only was just going in with my strongest Pokemon that I could use. And I wasn't that smart about like playing the game. I just had strong Pokemon. And this random NPC decided he was going to throw, I think it was Metagross, Latios, Salamence at me. And I was just like, what the hell, man?
Jesus.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That's brutal.
They really didn't want me winning that one.
That's dumb.
Yeah. And that's just
Battle Frontier.
That's just the thing.
Battle Frontier and Emerald is so fucking hard.
I didn't play Emerald nearly as much as I played like Ruby.
Did you do Battle Tower?
I did like a little bit of like the Battle Frontier stuff. But like definitely like Ruby was like my main, because that's where I was like trying to complete the Pokédex. And Feebas was
a piece of shit.
I actually caught one once, but I fucked up on its evolution, and then I don't know what happened.
Me too.
And it somehow got released, and I was like, but I could just breed it. Oh well. I never completed the Pokédex.
I've said this story many times before, but I'm just going to say it one last time. I was 199 out of 200. This was before I knew whether it was even possible to get Jirachi and Deoxys. I don't think I even knew what they were before this. I had 199 out of 200. I had caught Feebas. Here's the problem. My Ruby suffered from the berry glitch, which is your game does not actually have an internal battery dry. The internal battery is still fine, but it's not working properly. And so daily events stop happening. And the only way to patch this was to link to Fire Red and Leaf Green, which had a patch embedded in the game code to send over to fix it, which as an 11 to 12-year-old kid, I had no knowledge of. I ran out of Pokeblocks. I failed evolving Feebas. I never got the Milotic.
I believe the Jirachi, like if you try to get Jirachi from the Pokemon Coliseum bonus disc, it would also fix it? Like that would also fix any Ruby Sapphires. I believe that was another way they released the patch.
I believe it, because I know that they were aware of the glitch pretty early on, so they were putting it in like whatever games they could right afterwards. So
yeah,
I mean, I
remember that like being like a pop-up whenever you try to like do something with Jirachi.
Okay.
Like I remember there being like some sort of like, we have to do fucking shit to your dumb game because you're dumb. I'm like, I don't care. I've reset this Sapphire 8 times so I can keep getting Jirachis.
So yeah, like that was my experience. I will never forget that. Never.
Yeah.
I did eventually go back, and I just got the Pokédex completed for the first time in that game. I still got to do it for Emerald so I can get one of the Johto starters, but like it was so satisfying to see 200 out of 200 Hoenn Dex completion in Ruby, because it was like after playing Pokemon for so many years afterwards and never having a regional Dex completed, having one completed in the game that I was first closest to doing so. It was a good feeling.
Oh yeah.
Was there anything else we want to talk about with Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald before we talk about the rest of the games for this generation? Because they were not the only games. They were the big ones, but they weren't the only ones.
I mean,
I do have one nitpick about Pokemon Emerald, and it's the dumbest thing.
That?
So, like, when it comes to Pokemon games, I'm a stickler for, like, there being late game or post game areas where, like, you can find really high level wild Pokemon. And Emerald took that away. Because in Ruby and Sapphire, you had the Sky Pillar, and the Sky Pillar had stuff all the way up into the mid 60s. Or maybe it was it was late 60s. Yeah. It was like mid 50s and like early 60s. And they took that away for Emerald because you have to go there for the story.
Yep.
So the highest level wild Pokemon you can encounter are some Ditto in this one post-game area and the Smeargle in this cave that's at the Battle Frontier. Which, cool that they did this, like the Smeargle thing, because like obviously they want you to breed Pokemon to like use at the Battle Frontier so you have competitive Pokemon, and Smeargle can learn any move, so you can like do like some cool like breeding shenanigans and chain a bunch of moves onto Pokemon that normally can't get them. So like that's kind of clever that they did that, but like that is the only place where you can find like high level wild Pokemon. Victory Road is like the next highest, and it's the same as it was in Ruby and Sapphire. Like, biggest nitpick, I know, but oh well.
The games suck because of that. You're right.
I love these games.
Yeah, I mean they're great.
That's pretty much the long and short of it. They are my favorite Pokemon games. I will play. I'm excited to do an Emerald Nuzlocke just because I want to play Pokemon Emerald again.
Yeah.
And it'll be, a new way to play the game for me.
It'll be fun for me to laugh at him.
Oh boy.
So we also got remakes of Red, Blue, and Yellow in the form, mostly Red and Blue, but in the form of Fire Red and Leaf Green. Those came out in late 2004 in North America, early 2004 in Japan, and they have the same game structure, like code-wise, as the Generation 3 games. So, they'll be able to communicate with Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. And they reintroduced all of the Kanto Pokemon, the original 150. And you got the new Sevii Islands bonus area, which was totally new. Game Freak, you cowards, remake Fire Red, Leaf Green, bring back Sevii Islands. You didn't do it for Let's Go. What the hell? God damn it.
Because Let's Go is based off of Pokemon Yellow.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, Fire Red Leaf Green had that, which thanks to that post-game area, they was able to reintroduce. So Emerald would further do this, and we're going to talk about the 2 GameCube games as well. They played a big part in this as well. But Fire Red Leaf Green also reintroduced a bunch of Pokemon from Gold, Silver, Crystal, a lot of Johto Pokemon that were not originally available, and you can get those in the post-game area as well. Also, they randomly let you go catch one of the legendary dogs after you get the National Dex. The National Dex was like the big like introduction in Fire Red and Leaf Green's post-game. It was like the first time we got to hear of the term National Pokedex for most people. So that was like a big thing. You had to catch 60 Pokemon in order to obtain this. So it was a kind of a pain in the ass at the time if you weren't like a big collector that caught everything that you ran into. But I mean, it added some extra gameplay. You had the Fame Checker. You could like talk to NPCs and they would tell you dialogue about the different big prominent characters in the game and store them in a thing.
Whatever.
There
Nonsense.
was listen, this game also had Teachy TV, so you could have all these cool high quality tutorial information banks.
Did anyone ever use those?
I did.
I didn't.
I did.
Cloud's weird.
I am.
His parents named him Cloud.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
It's on your birth certificate.
It's there.
Another thing that like that was kind of unique to Fire Red Leaf Green was like you could press the shoulder buttons and it would open up like a help menu, and like you could go into like different
I hated that.
You could go into like different topics and it would be like you could like learn like the type chart and stuff like that. I don't know why it was only in these games, but you could do it.
Fucking hated that shit.
Really?
Yeah, it was annoying because I'd like if you're like on DS, or no, yeah, like one of them where you're like trying to like I don't know, I like maybe it was SP and I was trying to do like I would hit the shoulder buttons like I would when I'm playing Gold, Silver, Crystal. That's it, because that would stretch the screen.
Right.
So like
okay.
I got used to that. So I kept pulling up this stupid menu. I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Get this shit out of here.
That's
Who
true.
programmed this?
That's true.
So yeah, that's what it was.
No, I believe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like otherwise, like there's not a whole lot to really say about Fire Red Leaf Green. I mean, they are mostly faithful remakes otherwise of the original games. They just, update to Generation 3 engines so you can communicate with the new games. And they had some post-game content that was exclusive to these games and never came back. So that was pretty cool. But
I do enjoy them.
They're really good. They're some of my favorites in the series. They're really replayable. Like I can just go back and just replay them over and over and over again, because somehow, some way, like the combination of the Generation 1 Pokedex and the Generation 3 mechanics makes for such a really good balance of available Pokemon and pacing, and just like a lot of fun to just replay over and over again. Like, I mean, this is kind of the reason why like a lot of people play like Nuzlocke for these. A lot of people will like do ROM hacks of these games. Like these games are super popular in the community long after they came out, and just there's so much that they do with like the Generation 3 games in general are like,
I was going to say pretty much all Gen 3 is like this. They'll use the majority of Gen 3 as basis for a lot of like ROM hacks, a lot of challenge runs. But like Fire Red Leaf Green, especially early on, was like lots and lots of hacks, like of varying quality. You had like some crappy ones like Chaos Black, which literally had stuff that you couldn't complete because they poorly coded the warps in that game. That was cool. Oh,
yeah.
God. That game was so edgy. I just remember they had like that Pokemon Mew 3X, and I was like a stupid edgy 14-year-old, and I was like, that's so cool.
You probably
is that what 14-year-old you sounded like?
Probably. I hate to admit it, but that's probably what I sounded like when I was 14. I had a really high-pitched voice, and like I still had like the nasally part like this, so I talked a lot like this. Yeah. And then Coliseum and XD, those were the other two big games for the It was like Landon's like, yeah, baby, that's what we were talking about. That's what we've been waiting for.
Steve. Good answer.
Woo! So remember how earlier I mentioned that like Fire Red Leaf Green, Ruby Sapphire Emerald, all of these games, they were like they were trying to get all of the Pokemon available across the generation, but because money talks, they split as much of the returning Pokemon up across different games as they could. And two of the major games where they funneled a lot of these Pokemon into were Coliseum and XD. GameCube games, which can communicate with Ruby Sapphire Emerald, Fire Red Leaf Green, because they are basically the spiritual successors to the Pokemon Stadium games on the N64. So, but they also have their own story mode.
Yes. They are.
They do.
I mean, we recently replayed Pokemon XD. I mean, by that I mean I replayed it for the channel. And there are parts of it that like are kind of clunky because it's, it's Gen 3 like mechanics. And it's not as well paced necessarily as like the handheld games because they're handheld games.
Right.
But like there's some pretty big difficulty spikes in Coliseum and XD. But my God, are they just? It's fun to take stuff from people.
And worth noting, those two games are almost, and I say almost because there's like a battle or two, exclusively double battles. So like this was like a couple of games where they really showed off like double battles across a main story, and we wouldn't actually see like that sort of thing again in like a big way, like a really big way, until the DLC for Scarlet and Violet. Like that's how long it took for us to get substantial story content in a Pokemon game that was almost all double battle stuff. Like that's
Yeah. And I do enjoy that it's a lot of double battles. Like it makes it like interesting because Gen 3 introduces a lot of like especially battle moves that like really help lean into like the double battle mechanic, like helping hand.
Yeah. So like
and stuff like that.
That's a good point. So like in the previous generations, well, Gen 2 specifically, like it added a lot of new moves and stuff in, and like kind of like, you had like weather moves, entry hazards, like spikes, and they fleshed out the battle system with moves, but they were still moves that were like meant to be able to be played in a 1v1 single battle format. With the advent of double battles and the introduction of abilities, they were able to like tune abilities and new moves to like work specifically for this whole like new battle system that they had. So like you were saying, they had Helping Hand as a move. The move Protect just becomes so much better because in double battles, it's a lot easier to like maybe get a free turn with Protect if like everything's like targeting the same Pokemon that uses Protect. You've got abilities like Lightning Rod will move electric moves over to the Lightning Rod Pokemon. So like if your other Pokemon's weak to electric attacks, you don't have to worry because the Lightning Rod Pokemon will take that in. So like you could have like a Gyarados and a Rhydon next to each other, and they'll help each other out in a double battle because the Rhydon's using its Lightning Rod ability to pull electric attacks away from Gyarados. So like there is so much more strategy to Pokemon, and Coliseum and XD really explore that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought
I just really like.
I thought somebody was
really
going to
like
Great games.
Yeah.
I haven't played them in a very long time.
Yeah, me neither.
But they are fun games, and they do have like cool, unique stories and like an interesting, like different mechanic from usual Pokemon games.
Yeah.
And I like the protagonists because especially like the protagonist for the first game, because you're playing as a bad guy, essentially
A criminal.
He's a criminal that is like, I guess I don't care for these people anymore.
Yeah, like in the end, when you think about it, like he never really was like a hero per se. It was more like I used to be part of this team and I don't get along with them anymore, so I just have a vendetta against them in particular. Like it wasn't really like I guess you could say, oh, they did purify Pokemon, but like they weren't. I don't think they were really doing it just because oh, it's the good thing to do. It's more like oh, I'm gonna screw over the people that I don't like anymore, sort of thing. So like
yeah, I'm gonna fuck with them.
Like it really was like one of the only Pokemon games at all where you get to like play as someone who's not just like a black and white good guy blank canvas of yourself. Like they actually had their own character. That is really cool. Like you still don't see that really much at all, not just in Pokemon like the main games, but like spin-offs, everything just across the entire franchise. You don't get that a lot. So Coliseum does get some cool points for that.
Yeah, so there's that.
I think my only gripe with the GameCube games is like it would have been cool. Like obviously that would have taken a lot more effort, but it would have been cool if there was like an actual world that like you could explore that connected the towns and the different areas that you could go to. because there is like a world map that it's just like a cursor that you can go to like the different areas and then you can explore those areas. It would have been cool to have like an arching overworld that combine them, but I mean that probably would have been a lot of effort, especially for Coliseum where they wouldn't have had the resources to start with.
And they probably would have. It probably would have been more like a normal Pokemon game, because in that case you would like have to make routes
Right.
with wild Pokemon available, with like trainer battles that are there. I feel like if they did a new Coliseum, if they did like a new entry into this like side story series, like they could do that and they could flesh out the Oron region and add like routes and add more trainer battles, and then you could make the Pokemon that you're catching unique to like that's the only one you can get of that, whereas like there's some like just random stuff that's available through the region, because they started to introduce wild Pokemon in XD.
Yeah, they had like the Poke Spot where you could get Pokemon to show up, but like that was the only spot that they did that.
Yeah, but then in that case, like that's them like, hey, wild Pokemon are coming to the region. Like a third game could be like,
Expanding
now
on
there's
that.
just wild Pokemon.
Yeah,
they're there. You can go catch them. But the Shadow Pokemon are like very unique Pokemon, and
Yeah.
with how big the Pokedex is nowadays, like
a lot of potential there.
there is a ton of potential for
Yeah.
like what they make Shadow Pokemon versus route fodder.
Right. So yeah, I mean those were the major games of the generation. Do we like what would you say is probably like one of your like I'm trying to like think. What is like your favorite aspect of this generation as a whole out of these games? Like what they bring to the table? What is like probably like one of the biggest things for you? Like why do you like it?
I love double battles, honestly. And the fact that they introduced them in this generation is pretty huge. Let's see. I don't know. I mean, that's probably like the single best thing these, like if you had to single out exactly one thing that this generation brought to the table, that's probably the best one.
Okay. So for me, I like my whole thing is it's not really so much a concrete thing as like as a concept that with like, and this is more for like Ruby Sapphire Emerald Fire Red Leaf Green specifically because I didn't play enough XD Coliseum, but like you could probably say like if I'll just explain. Like I just like the fact that in this generation there was a real push for additional ways to enjoy the game outside of the main quest, because in the Game Boy games it was kind of hard to supply that sort of thing, especially with Red, Blue, and Yellow. It was their first time doing it, so like they were just focused on building a world, making a game out of it, and it worked for what it was. Gold, Silver, Crystal, they like tried to start experimenting with ways to add extra content. You had the bug catch, you had like daily events and weekly rotating things that you could do. You had the bug catching contest. You had Battle Tower in Crystal. You had the Pokemon house in the trainer house in Viridian City that you could like send your friends or send another copy of your own game or another game of your own. Send your like trainers data over and like rematch them every day. So like they tried to really get you on this, like there's a bunch of content to keep coming back to. But Generation 3 really like this was the turning point where like that was a thing. Like that was just all over the place. You had contests, you had battle facilities all over. You had just so much stuff to do. And I just think that
you had the trainer home, like the home base that you could work on.
The secret bases. Yep.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that they did like a thing where like, just like with the trainer house in the second gen games, you could send data over to your friend's game and get their secret base, battle their team. if your battery isn't dead, you could do this once a day too. Like, it was repeatable. So like, it's just a really good, just like not an overwhelming amount, but and not like a little bit, just a nice, just right amount of like extra content, even after you've beaten the main story, to just play a bunch and just keep you coming back to replay the games and just play them more. So like my favorite Pokemon games are all the ones where you have a bunch of extra stuff you can do. So like Generation 3's in there.
Yep.
I would say for me as a kid, it was definitely double battles, because
I mean, that's cool.
like I loved being able to do that.
Just send 2 Pokemon out at the same time.
Yeah, and then just beat the living shit out of fucking those 2 nerds right on that route where the Pokemon daycare is.
Yeah.
There's like a there's a
I know it's true you're talking about. The 2 lasses. Like they're just right
hanging down there. Yeah. As someone who is older, it is definitely like the mechanics that Gen 3 like did, like this, like natures and stuff. Like having all of that added in, and splitting it was just like some of the mechanic stuff that they did.
So like
was definitely like the big stuff.
I didn't want to spend too much time talking about it, but like one thing that they really changed, so like the stat system was DVs, determinate values, and stat experience. And they changed that to IVs and EVs, and IVs are basically the same as DVs. It's just different numbers that they use, but they're effectively the same thing. It's just randomly generated bonuses to the stats. But the EV system totally overhauled. Stat experience you could generate for every stat, and you could max out for every stat. With EVs, they made it so that you had to pick and choose where your points were going. So like you could build Pokemon to fill different roles now, rather than always be the same end game. Like you could have an offensively geared Swampert, or you can make it more defensive. You could make Blaziken be super fast, or you could kind of bulk it up a little bit. You could have a Salamence that goes more towards physical attack, or one that goes more towards special attack. Like you could just tailor make the Pokemon that just created a bunch of variety. So like now, on top of having all these Pokemon that you could use, they also don't even have to be played the same way anymore. So, I mean, that's really cool. So, yeah. So though that's all of like the main stuff. Real quick though, just want to go through, there was a lot of side games. This generation had a lot. We talked about some of them, not quite like a whole lot, but like, I mean, when we did like our
there's
primer,
only one worth talking about.
So, I mean, the side games, you've got Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire. You have Mystery Dungeon, Red and Blue Rescue Team. And you have Pokemon Ranger.
Yeah.
You have there's Pokemon Dash that also came out. There was Pokemon Troze. They experimented with a bunch of stuff this generation. But I mean, the big ones really are Pinball, Ruby, Sapphire, Mystery Dungeon, Red and Blue Rescue Team, and Ranger. Those are like the big ones.
Mystery Dungeon, we can literally do
its own. We could do a whole podcast about just Mystery Dungeon.
We could do a whole podcast on just Red and Blue.
I don't know about that. Like maybe.
I can. I can talk about those games for probably an hour, and then move on to Time Explorers.
Yeah.
I could. But that's me. Yeah. I mean, you can talk about how fucking dumb Ranger is if you want, I guess.
I'll just go over it real quick. So like I played Ranger. I played it so like this was the thing I was talking about back earlier during the podcast, like introducing the whole thing. Almost all of these games, and I didn't say this about Coliseum and XD, but XD applies as well. Like you had stuff from like the upcoming Generation 4 games like teased with these games. Like XD had Munchlax and Bonsly made an appearance. Red Rescue Team, Blue Rescue Team have a Lucario statue, and Lucario obviously not a Pokemon that existed at the time. And then Pokemon Ranger had the Manaphy egg infamously. So that was another thing where like you had Pokemon showing up that like you couldn't legitimately have yet until the next generation. There was a lot of those teases. I played Ranger in anticipation for Diamond and Pearl, and I remember playing through the whole thing in one night. It's a fun game where like, you know, it's kind of cool that you have the stylus and the touch screen. You can loop around and like the Pokemon have different obstacles in order to try to keep you from being able to catch them. And then you can use those Pokemon to get through different obstacles on the overworld. I think it's pretty fun. It's kind of like the idea of like HMs in the main series, but made in a more like world building sort of way. It's kind of cool. Pokemon Pinball Ruby Sapphire is, God, I wish they would make another one, but at the same time, like we don't need another pinball game. Like it's pinball, but at the same time, they really went balls to the wall for this game. It's so
good.
It has so much.
It's so fucking good.
It's so much better than it has any right to be. It's a pinball game, but you catch Pokemon.
I would love another Pokemon pinball game, honestly.
Yeah, they have like different, like Pokemon Pinball. It was like in the same vein as like Kirby's Pinball Land, where like it was pinball, but like the enemies had like these special attacks, and like you could like in the case of Pokemon, you could catch the Pokemon. There was like a whole thing about that, and it was interesting how they managed to incorporate pinball mechanics and like hazards and stuff like that into that sort of, I don't know. It's wild how they think of that stuff. It's pretty cool. We don't have to talk about Pokemon Dash though. We don't have to talk about
Al?
Yeah.
Wait, Al's not. Is Al back yet? I want Al to talk about Pokemon Dash.
Yeah.
Well, he's not here. So I guess we don't have to talk about Pokemon Dash.
Another thing that was interesting about this generation is like the weird like side, not so much games, but like software they released. Like, do you guys remember Pokemon Channel or Pokemon Boxed Ruby and Sapphire?
Yeah.
GameCube software that was just there.
How else are you supposed to hold all of these Pokemon?
Just throw them up on Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire. That game goes for, quote unquote game, goes for a lot of money on the secondary market now. Like,
it's like
can't find it.
Last I saw, it was like $300, and I'm pretty sure that was like a couple years ago. So it's probably more than that now.
It's probably so expensive.
I mean, there's also, I mentioned it earlier, there was the Pokemon Coliseum bonus disc, which had a preview for the Jirachi movie, and you could download Jirachi to Pokemon Ruby Sapphire. Get yourself a nice level 1 Jirachi. So yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There's a lot of dumb stuff.
The game's still going for a couple $100 on average.
Like around 300-ish.
Depends. Like some of them are 200, some of them are 300. There's a couple like slightly cheaper ones going for like sub 150-ish, but like it's not a good time if you want to try and go find Pokemon Boxed Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah, no, fuck that shit.
That's just an unfortunate thing about Generation 3 games in general. They're all expensive now. Like, all of them. Like, I think I mentioned talking about this on, like, the previous podcast episodes where, like, Pokemon games are starting to get up there in price. But, like, you can still kind of find, like, the Game Boy games for, like, around the price of a full retail game. That's not happening with Gen 3. Like, the cheapest ones are, like, $80 now. And that's, like, Ruby Sapphire. And then if you want Emerald or Fire Red or XD, good luck. Good luck. That's all I'm going to say. Like, The GameCube games are over $100 each. Last I checked, and Coliseum is like not Coliseum. XD is going upwards of like 200.
Yeah, fuck
And
that noise.
and Coliseum, if you want the bonus disc, like if you want it CIB, complete unbox everything, that's
well, the
like
bonus disc is its own.
yeah.
It's like a separate. It has its own box and everything.
Yeah. If you wanted like all of that together, that's like $250 or more.
Oh, okay.
It's really crazy. Like people will send like that all in like one package, but it's not cheap. It's really expensive now.
That's dumb.
It's crazy. I mean, that's Gen 3 for you. There's a lot of nostalgia for it, and it's retained a lot of value over the years because there's a lot of good stuff to be had there. So
I blame Jack's generation.
Wow. I mean,
anyone who's a year younger than me.
I was going to say that this generation lasted from March of 2003 in America anyway, March of 2003 to
April of 2007,
which was when I was 7, almost 8, and a few days from turning 12. So,
long generation.
Pretty much the prime like area for a child to start playing Pokemon.
Yeah, I was 11 when it started and 15 when it was over, so it was pretty formative time. Fun fact, actually, that I didn't mention before is Generation 3, if you go by the Japanese release dates, had not one, but 2 off years where they didn't release a main series game. Not counting Coliseum XD, like they only counting like Ruby Sapphire Emerald, Fire Red Leaf Green. They didn't release a game in 2003 because Ruby Sapphire originally came out in late 2002, and they didn't release a game in 2005 because Emerald was out by the end of 2004 over there. So, and then if you go by the overseas dates, I mean, we saw Ruby Sapphire in 2003. We saw Fire and Leaf Green a year and a half later because it was late 2004. And then Emerald came out in May 2005. So we didn't get Diamond and Pearl until almost 2 whole years later. So, like,
yeah,
that was a really long time to not have a main series Pokemon game by today's standards.
Yep.
Almost 2 full years. So, Gen 3, really long generation. Not saying that's a bad thing. Kind of want to see that happen again. Please let us just soak in a generation for once. Yeah, any other thoughts about Generation 3? Like, we've kind of covered everything. Pretty concise. Did you guys actually like do contests at all in the Hoenn games?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I spent a long time doing contests.
I love contests, honestly. I think they're fun.
Al mentioned the TCG at the time of Gen 3. That was actually when I dropped out of the generation of the trading card game. It was Generation 3. And that's not because I was fed up with like the card game because like I only ever really collected for it. It was just because Yu-Gi-Oh was the thing. Like, I only have the attention and money to pay attention to one card game at a time. And early on it was Pokemon, and then it was Yu-Gi-Oh, and now it's Magic the Gathering. Like, that's all. It's just,
your life is just a series of revolving door of card games.
Yeah. Wait till 2026 when I ditch Magic the Gathering and hop on that Lorcana bandwagon, the new Disney card game.
Oh no.
Fuck yeah.
Jeez.
No, you'll just get back into Pokemon again.
God. Oh yeah.
And then
it'll just rotate.
Magic.
It'll just rotate the big 3 over and over.
Yep.
That's fine. Hey Al, you want to see something?
Oh, Landon wants to show Al something.
Hold on, let me get to it. All right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it on screen.
You're gonna do it on screen.
We can cut this out. All right. So is it at the fucking banner? Go to the fucking banner. Here's your fucking 10 poll for this fucker.
Oh boy.
If I get her, I'm gonna be pissed at you. No, I didn't get her. This is all trash.
Yay.
There. I didn't get her.
Nope, there's only trash here.
Woo. I'll take trash rather than fucking garbage. So there's that. Anyway, I'm gonna stand up now.
Yeah, so we actually managed to cover our big topic pretty quickly. So I guess we're actually gonna have time to catch up and talk about what we've been up to. But before that, guys, we have a Patreon.
We have a Patreon.
If you aren't subscribed to it, $3 tier is the lowest tier. I mean, we're not telling you have to support us, but it really does help out. And we do polls so you guys can help decide what our content's going to be looking like in the future. We've got exclusive content if you are at the $6 tier, as well as a patron shout out, which we have Pixel Vixen at our $6 tier as per usual. So thank you, of course. And thank you everybody else who's subscribed and followed the Patreon and helped establish what we're going to do next. It's great to have the input so that we can have a direction going forward for the channel. It's, nice to have. We've got, YouTube. We, export all of our VODs and everything over there. We've got a Discord server that, one day will get popular enough where we should probably lock it. But for now, you can just jump right on in. It's in the links in the description every time. So how are we doing on Twitch right now? What are we up to, Jack?
Well, last night we just finished Banjo-Kazooie, and we have a new stream series starting tomorrow.
Yeah, we do.
Lennon, do you want me to spoil it, or should we keep it a secret?
No, you can go. We definitely talked about it.
Okay.
About wanting to do this for a long time. So
we're doing Euphoria the Saga 2.
Ooh.
Yeah, we are, baby.
Yeah,
let's fucking
baby.
go.
I did not know this. That's pretty hype.
We literally, Jack and I talked about it this morning.
Yeah, it was today.
Yeah, it was
because I finished Banjo-Kazooie last night, and Al asked me, "What are you guys doing next?" And I'm like, I haven't thought about it, honestly. I'm going to talk to Lennon about it.
I had mentioned it to Jack that I wanted to do Euphoria the Saga 2, and he had mentioned that he wanted it to, he wanted to see it.
Yes.
So, evening streams is the best way. So,
yeah. So we're going to do that.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, did you already mention that I have a poll that's going to be over by the time this goes up? And
oh, yeah.
We did not mention that. What is the poll for that again?
The poll was for either Dragon Quest 3 or Dragon Quest Monsters, the original one for Game Boy, and VI Landslide, because GamingStooges itself did not vote.
I did
and
not
you didn't need to.
Yeah, no. I looked at the poll. I was like, well, okay.
Your vote is meaningless.
I didn't need to even. I just looked at it. I was like, okay, Dragon Quest Monsters apparently is happening.
It's Dragon Quest Monsters, folks. So we'll be starting that Saturday, and that'll probably run all the way until Spookfest.
Yep. Speaking of polls, we did have a poll on what our next, not our next, but an upcoming podcast very soon in the near future is going to be. Maybe it'll be our next one. It depends on things that are going to happen. We got big summer game announcements that are supposed to happen, so we don't know if that's all going to be happening in time for us to do a podcast in the middle of June, or if we're going to have to push it back and wait for all of the stuff to go through so we can do it all at once. But there was a poll, and it was between 2D Mario games, Mario platformers, and the Super Smash Brothers series, and so far narrowly Super Smash Brothers is winning. By the time this goes out on other platforms and is not live, that's already going to be long over. So you will find out what we will be doing when we do that podcast. But it's probably going to be Smash because pretty much everybody that can vote has voted, unless people change their mind.
And I won't.
So
there's that.
There's that, exactly.
So, fuck you, Al. I did it. And I didn't even tell people what to vote for.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. We are going to have another poll in the near future for another podcast topic. We've got other podcast topics planned for like the next several months, basically. So pretty excited. Going to have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Landon, did you want to tell us about Tillamook? What you got?
Yes, talking about interesting things to talk about, because Al complained last time that I ate the delicious chocolate collection, chocolate hazelnut, double chocolate hazelnut ice cream. We've got French vanilla tonight.
Ranch vanilla.
About the most opposite I can go. It's French vanilla.
Hell yeah.
That
There you
creamy,
go.
rich goodness.
Cold, hard, refreshing.
Yep.
Tillamook, cold, hard, refreshing.
Yeah.
When's
that works,
the
right?
Tillamook and Mike's Hard Lemonade collab?
Dude, how fast would you snap that up, Landon?
I would buy one.
Just one.
Well, and then buy another.
And then another.
We don't have unlimited freezer room.
True. But you would buy one, and then one, and then one, and then one.
Until they're no longer available.
There you go. So, we have a little bit, I think we have a little bit of time. Did we want to catch up and, tell the class what we've been up to? Anything new, exciting, interesting to share?
I personally don't have a whole lot.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I did.
There you go.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. The main thing that happened in the past couple weeks is that over the weekend, this past weekend being the weekend of May 31st to June 2nd, we celebrated Bethany's birthday.
Okay.
We went to Tied Down in Detroit, which is a hardcore fest, and we saw a lot of bands and a lot of people get beat up. It was great.
Fun time?
It was a very fun time. She loved it. She was super happy, even though she was like really exhausted by the time it was over. But
I mean, that's how it is. You go to shows and you wipe yourself out, and it's fun.
I was so fucking tired when it was over, but it was fun. I went last year too, and it was great then, and it was great this year. So, yeah, that was pretty much the main thing that happened. That's about it, actually.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I have like nothing new to talk about. Like, I really just a whole lot of just gaming and doing the same stuff I have been. So like nothing really new on that front.
Yeah. I started Sea of Stars. I don't know if I had started that last time.
I started Paper
Go
Mario:
ahead.
The Thousand Year Door.
Ooh.
Enjoying it?
Oh yeah, I love it. I mean,
How far are you in?
I've beaten chapter 1, so I haven't gotten very far, but I have done a little bit.
Decent amount, at
Okay.
least.
Yeah. I haven't had a lot of time to sit down and play it, but because I was gone all weekend, and I spent Monday sleeping the entire day. I was so sore. I could not do anything. And then I worked yesterday and today, but still, I've tried to find the time to play it, and it's been fun so far.
It's funny, like the week where Landon and I are like, we didn't really do a whole lot. Jack's like, I did stuff. I get to
I did
contribute.
stuff. Yeah. Thousand Year Door, baby.
So yeah, I started Sea of Stars, and I'm about 3, maybe 3.5 hours into it by now, and I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely lived up to the praise that I've heard this game receive, and like I'm like barely scratching the surface, but the combat is just, it's like exactly what I wanted out of something that says inspired by Chrono Trigger and for the combat, and then Golden Sun for the overworld like exploration. because it is very Golden Sun.
I'm looking at screenshots and it looks really cool.
I played a bit of the demo, and I remember I was having a little trouble like finding my way through because I was like stumbling around a bit. But like I have to get back to like I should probably try and grab it when I have a chance. Like I was interested based on what I was playing.
If you actually play, like if you start from like scratch from the beginning of the game, I feel it's a little bit easier to like find your way with exploration. Because I remember having a similar issue.
Yeah, I think the demo just had a bad like placement of like dropping you in a way that like was kind of hard to.
And what's funny is the first area you drop into in the demo, like that little stretch where you're going down the mountain.
Yep.
It's pretty early in. Like that is like pretty early into the game. Like I am at exploring the dungeon immediately after that.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Did you get to the town section that was in the demo?
Yes, and I remember I did not get far after that. Like I had gotten to the town and that was it. Like I had no idea what I was doing.
That is sort of where like I definitely like lost my place in the demo. I haven't gotten that far into the game. But I will say like when you start from the beginning of the game, it does like a really good job at like making you feel out the mechanics of like overworld exploration.
Okay. So
yeah.
It wasn't, I wasn't like alone in that, like having a little bit of trouble with the demo that same way. So like it'd be,
I had that same feeling.
All right. So if I was to get back into it and like play through from the beginning and actually like play the game in general, I'd probably enjoy it. Cause I was liking what I was playing until I got stuck.
Yeah. And I mean, you played Golden Sun, right?
Oh yeah. I beat Golden Sun. I love Golden Sun.
That's what I thought. I thought it was like you really enjoy Golden Sun. So you will end up really enjoying the thank you. The like I feel like everything about it.
Yeah.
Cuz like the combat is very like this is Chrono Trigger.
I was like you don't get a whole lot of opportunity to do the combat in the game, in the demo at least. But like I remember I got to do a few fights and like I was like, oh, this is cool. I just wish that I could do more because obviously this is a demo, so my options are extremely limited. But like I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. So you have some very interesting looking food that's making me very hungry.
It's street tacos.
Oh, I love street tacos.
Homemade street tacos.
Nice.
So yeah. That's what I get to look forward to after we wrap this up.
Well, we're basically about to. Anything else you guys wanted to share real quick?
What else? Watch
the Patreon video for this month.
Yes.
So it's related to the topic that we just talked about today.
Mentioned that early on in the podcast. We have a tier list for all of the Gen 3 Pokemon. If you're wondering why we didn't talk about like any specific Pokemon in general, besides like the starters and like just the overall fact that there's like a bunch of Pokemon you can get. The reason why we don't talk about it is because we have a very extensive tier list discussion about all of the Hoenn Gen 3 Pokemon that were introduced, all 135 of them. We rank everything. We go, we talk decently about like about all of them. It was a pretty long tier list video that will be up around the time that this goes out, finalized to other platforms. So YouTube, Spotify, all those places. That's when we're going to have that tier list video out. So if you subscribe to the $6 tier, you can hear our in-depth opinions and thoughts about all those Pokemon. And we have a lot of very interesting things to say, to be honest, about some of them. So, really good video that pairs well with this episode. So.
Even though it didn't win the Patreon poll, look forward to 2D Mario at some point.
We will be talking about 2D Mario games at some point.
Hell yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. We're going to cut it short here because Landon is tired, and also we've basically said everything we need to. We will see you guys, though, in our next episode, our next podcast a couple weeks from now. Until then, though, roll the outro. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That was like pretty concise.